When people picture American tanks in World War II, they usually imagine one thing: endless columns of Shermans rolling forward. For a long time, I thought that image was just about numbers. Then I started paying attention to why this tank existed, how it was built, and what it was actually expected to do. And that's when the story changed. The M4 Sherman wasn't designed to be the best tank on the battlefield. It was designed to be the one that showed up, kept moving, and kept fighting, no matter where the war went. And that philosophy shaped everything about it. The Sherman didn't appear out of nowhere. Its roots go straight back to the M3 Lee, a tank that worked, but only just. The M3 had firepower, but its main gun was stuck in the hull with limited movement, which made fighting flexible battles difficult. Crews could hit targets, but only if the entire tank was pointing the right way, and that caused problems fast. American designers knew this. Wasn't sustainable. So instead of chasing a radical design, they did something very deliberate. They took what already worked mechanically and fixed what didn't tactically. That meant a fully rotating turret placed in the center of the tank, carrying a 75mm gun that could engage infantry, fortifications, and armor, without forcing the driver to line up every shot. The result was the T6 prototype, finished in September 1941. By February 1942, it became the M4 Sherman. And once that decision was made, there was no turning back. From the start, the Sherman was built around one core idea: reliability at scale. The United States didn't just want a tank. It wanted tens of thousands of tanks that could be shipped across oceans, unloaded under fire, repaired in the field, and sent back into combat. That shaped everything. Parts were standardized, engines were chosen based on availability, not perfection. Suspension systems were proven, not experimental. Factories that once built locomotives, cars, and machinery were converted almost overnight. The numbers tell the story. By the end of the war, over 49,000 Shermans had been built, making it the most produced American tank of the conflict. Only the Soviet T-34 exceeded it. And those Shermans didn't just stay in American hands. They went to Britain, Canada, Free French units, the Soviet Union, China, and beyond. Wherever the Allies fought, the Sherman followed. And soon, it would be tested for real. The Sherman's first real trial came in North Africa in late 1942. At El Alamein, British crews finally had a tank that could meet German armor without being outmatched across the board. Against Panzer IIIs and early Panzer IVs, the Sherman held its own. Its 75mm gun was flexible, its reliability stood out, and its crew ergonomics were noticeably better than many contemporary designs. That early success created confidence, maybe too much. American planners began to believe the Sherman didn't need major changes. And that belief would soon collide with reality. If you're new here, subscribe, because this is where the story stars at all. American expected tank destroyers to handle enemy armor, while Shermans focused on mobility, exploitation, and support. That's why the original 75mm gun emphasized high explosive performance over armor penetration. It worked well against infantry and fortifications. Against heavier German tanks, it struggled. But here's the thing. The Sherman wasn't meant to fight alone. It fought with artillery, air support, engineers, and logistics behind it. And that combined approach masked weaknesses, at least for a while. Until Normandy. On June 6, 1944, the Sherman didn't arrive as a dueling machine. It arrived as a problem solver. Some rolled off landing craft. Others swam ashore using duplex drive systems. Many never made it. Those that did pushed inland, supporting infantry, knocking out strong points, and forcing openings where none existed. In the hedgerows of Normandy, visibility was limited, ranges were short, and ambushes were constant. This wasn't the environment for long-range gunfights. It was the environment for coordination, numbers, and persistence. And that's where the Sherman fit. But German Panthers and Tigers were waiting. And suddenly, firepower and protection mattered more than theory. The original 75mm gun struggled against newer German armor. American crews knew it. So did British crews. The response wasn't panic, it was adaptation. New Shermans received the 76mm gun, offering better penetration at longer ranges. The British went further, fitting the 17-pounder into the Sherman Firefly. That combination finally gave Allied units the ability to engage Panthers and Tigers head-on if conditions were right. Not every Sherman got those upgrades, but enough did to shift the balance. And that balance didn't rely on one tank winning every fight. It relied on enough tanks being there to keep pressure constant. Sherman armor was adequate, not exceptional. Early models carried dry ammunition storage in the hull sides, and when penetrated, the results were often catastrophic. Crews knew this. Statistics later showed that a high percentage of penetrated Shermans burned. That reputation stuck, but it wasn't the full story. Later models introduced wet ammunition stowage, placing shells in water-jacketed bins on the hull floor. Burn rates dropped dramatically. This didn't make the Sherman invulnerable, it made it survivable. And survivability mattered just as much as thickness, because a crew that escaped could fight again. Here's where the Sherman quietly dominated. Its engines, suspension, and drivetrain weren't glamorous, but they worked. Shermans could march hundreds of miles without major breakdowns. They crossed bridges heavier tanks couldn't. They were easier to recover, easier to repair, and easier to keep supplied. German crews often fought, well tactically, but lost operationally. A tank that breaks down doesn't fight. The Sherman kept fighting, and over time, that difference added up. In the Pacific, the Sherman faced a completely different war. Jungle terrain, short ranges, and fortified positions made armor thickness less important than reliability and infantry cooperation. The Sherman excelled there. After the war, it didn't disappear. It fought in Korea. It served in multiple armies worldwide. Some variants remained active into the 1960s. That kind of service life isn't accidental. It's the result of a design that prioritized use over perfection. The more time I spent with the Sherman story, the more obvious something became. This tank wasn't built to win duels. It was built to win wars. Everything about it points in that direction. Not elegance, not intimidation, not technical dominance, but availability, reliability, and endurance. The Sherman proved that modern war isn't decided by the most impressive machine on paper, but by the one that can be built fast, fixed fast, shipped anywhere, and kept moving under pressure. German armor chased perfection, thicker armor, bigger guns, tighter tolerances, and in doing so, they created machines that demanded ideal conditions to function. The Sherman accepted the opposite reality. It assumed things would go wrong, parts would break, crews would make mistakes, bridges would be weak, fuel would be dirty, and battles would stretch longer than planned. And it was designed to survive that world. That's why it mattered on D-Day. Not because it outgunned Panthers, but because there were Shermans on every beach, behind every infantry advance, filling every gap when something failed. When one burned, another rolled forward. When one broke down, it could be repaired. When crews were lost, replacements could be trained and put back into the fight quickly. The Sherman proved that industrial strength, logistics, and doctrine can outweigh raw battlefield performance. It showed that winning doesn't always look heroic up close. It looks repetitive, exhausting, and relentless. It also proved something harder to accept, that the men inside these machines weren't relying on myth or superiority, they were relying on a system that valued continuity over glory. They fought knowing their tank wasn't the best, but trusting that it would start, move, fire, and bring them home more often than not. By the time the war ended, the Sherman hadn't just supported victory, it had defined how victory was achieved, not with a single breakthrough, not with one perfect
tank
machine,
crews to remove this improvised armor, but it continued to be used throughout the war.
Doing their job
Crew
every
survivability
single
was
day
further improved
until
by
the
adding a
enemy
hatch
simply
for the
ran
loader.
out of ways to
Yes,
stop
the loader
them.
didn't have his own hatch and
once
had
you
to go through the
understand
commander's
that,
hatch, then
the
around
Sherman
or under the
stops
gun
being
breech.
overrated
One veteran
or
Sherman loader
underrated.
recalled his horrifying
becomes
experience
exactly
from the war
what
when
it
his
always
tank was
was.
hit in the upper right
The
part of
tank
the turret.
that proved how
The shell
modern
instantly
wars
killed the
are
gunner and
actually
commander,
won.
trapping the loader
If
inside
this
as the
gave you
tank
a new
quickly filled with
perspective on one of
smoke.
history's most
He
debated
couldn't move the
tanks,
two bodies, and the time his
subscribe
tank
now
was hit
because
in the
there are
upper
plenty
right
more
killed the gunner
untold
and
stories
commander.
like this one waiting.